you have more than 2 Porsche Cayennes chasing you in the prologue, and after you beat the train, one of those Cayennes will hit the train and start to spaz out. Before heading to Knopf Hill in the first event, in Jax's garage in the background, there will be a different version of the Camaro Z01 and an Audi R8 which you cannot choose or drive, and it will always be there regardless of which of the 5 starter cars you choose. In this race event in Altamont Pass Road, it will consist of vehicles that are lower tiers than what Jack is driving. The very first time trial on Interstate 580 is the only time trial that it's mainly set on a straight line in the highway. Similar to the event in Altamont Pass Road, this first event of Stage 2 in Highway 140 will consist of lower tier cars. The time trial at El Portal Road will consist of you going off-road in its second half of the event. This race in El Capitan is the first to introduce gas stations in where you can drive to them and change vehicles. Before this race event in Tioga Pass Road, you will get introduced to Marcus Blackwell's car, not just being an Aston Martin 177, but also being the one and only Tier 6 car out of the entire run. This final event in Ellery Lake in Stage 2 is the first to introduce elimination races. This first event of Stage 3 in Panamint Valley is the only event that you can perform the biggest jump. This elimination event in Junction Road has 3 types of density of traffic. The first being with no traffic with the first opponent, then traffic on the opposite side with the second opponent, and traffic on both lanes, doesn't matter, opposite and the right lane, with the final opponent. This race event in the Old Spanish Trail is the first event to introduce the police to chase after you during a race since the first race in San Francisco. While this is the first event to introduce rival battles, but this is also the first of 2 events in where you will face more than one rival on the same event, and only one of those rivals gets eliminated. Depending where your vehicle is at in the row when you cross the line in Las Vegas Boulevard and winning the race, it will either turn to the left or to the right, in which, if it turns left, that is where the final event of Stage 3 will start. Speaking of being the final event of Stage 3, this is actually the shortest event of the entire run in terms of distance, 1.3 miles. In the commencement of the 4th stage in North Shore Road, or in the Valley of Fire, it's the first event to mirror previous layouts that we have already raced in the first 3 stages. This one in particularly mirroring Panamint Valley, the first event of the 3rd stage. In this time trial in Highway 169, nice, is the only event in where you will do it blind or with low visibility, which is caused by Marcus Blackwell brake checking Jack and in turn blowing out both headlights. In this race in Rockville, you will get introduced to 3 new police vehicles, a Nissan GT-R R35, a Porsche Cayenne, and a Dodge Charger. For this race and chase in the $1 Million Highway in Red Mountain Pass is the only event to have a gas station with the shortest distance between the start line where you're starting the event and the gas station itself. In the Eliminator event in Log Hill, you will get to start ahead of an opponent as Jack has passed them during the cutscene. In the first event of Stage 5 in Interstate 70, once the WRX has spun you out, you can move the camera around during the cutscene. The following race in Glenwood Springs is not the only event to feature police throughout the entire stage, but it's also the only event to feature Porsche Cayenne police vehicles coming after you, given the circumstances of the weather that the other vehicles cannot handle. Just like the Mila and Nikki battle in Las Vegas, with this battle with Cesar, this is the one with the most rivals in a single event, with 3. Cesar and his brothers. The time trial in A-Spin is the first to introduce rocks in the middle of the road, and where, if you hit them, you'll slow down a little bit. And the final event of the 5th stage called Summit is where avalanches will begin to happen, with long-range weaponry firing into the mountains. That snow, rocks, and boulders will start to fall down to make you crash, or make you slow down to the point that you get buried. The first event of the 6th stage in Commerce City, Denver, Colorado is the only event of the entire stage that has a snowy weather atmosphere. There are some states in the run in where we only get to do one event for that particular state. This elimination in particular is the only event that you can do in the state of Nebraska. The first event of the state of South Dakota in Badlands National Park, South Dakota 44, is the first to introduce thunder and lightning to be visible. Similar to the time trial in El Portal Road in California, this time trial in South Dakota 240 is another event that the game forces you to go off-road. In this rival battle with Calvin Garrett is the first event to introduce Tier 5 cars in the run for the first time since the first event in San Francisco with the Paganis on the Cinque. In this event in Country Highway, you can drive through barns as shortcuts. In this race in Riverside Drive is also another event that has Tier 5 cars, just the McLaren MP412C being in the race. At the end of the Kennedy Expressway elimination event, also being the final event to get to the top 50 in Chicago, it's also the only time that you'll ever get to see the mob Porsche Cayennes during daytime hours. This event in Lower Wacker and downtown Chicago is the only event that has the most action going on in a single event. First starting off with a rival battle with Marcus Blackwell, then a quick time event to run away from the mob helicopter, then a quick time event to steal a cop car, and then getting chased by that same mob helicopter with the cop car, and then another quick time event to get out of the cop car before the train runs it over. During the first event in downtown Chicago of the 8th stage, there will be multiple cop cars scattered around in the event next to wrecked vehicles that the mob helicopter has shut down. The next race in Lakeshore Drive is the only event in where you can directly see the moon in front of you, and it's also a full moon. This race event in Toledo, Ohio in Interstate 75 is the first to introduce the mob to be during an event. Regardless of what Audi you're driving in the Northwest Freeway elimination event, your headlights are going to be yellow and they will change back to their regular color once you cross the finish line. In this final mob chase, this will also be the final event in the run to take place at night. This race event in the Expressway of Beaver Valley, Pennsylvania mirrors the first event of Stage 7 in Country Highway. For some reason, after completing the lone race event in West Virginia, you will get a police chatter dialogue playing in the black screen between continue the run post-race of the previous event and reading Mila Belovas' profile. Remember when I mentioned something about one of them getting eliminated, of either being Mila or Nikki in Las Vegas? Well, Mila's the one that didn't get eliminated. Aside from the fact that she somehow got past Chicago, at this point of the run, she's the second highest competitor with a Tier 4 car to be here. Second to Cesar and his brothers. If you want to count them, she will be fourth. The final time trial of the run in Sawmill Drive is the first to introduce Lamborghini Gallardo police cars. In the first event of the final stage of the run in Pine Grove Road, Eddie Cook is the only rival that we only get to meet once, defeat once, in a legit one-on-one battle. The final race event in Interstate 78 mirrors the layout of Northwest Freeway in Cleveland, Ohio. The final elimination event in Union, New Jersey contains a junkyard that is eerily similar to the junkyard that we've seen at the beginning of the game. In this Newark Bay rival showdown against Cesar, you will only get to face against him, while his brothers just stay behind and likely get arrested. In this rival showdown in the New Jersey Turnpike against Calvin Garrett, this will be the last event to feature any police interference. In the final event in New York City, you have to be prepared for 3 areas of the race to not crash out. First being driving on the oncoming lane of the Brooklyn Bridge, driving on the underground subway tunnel in where Marcus Blackwell forces you with his gun without shooting, and driving on the dockyard without crashing into anything and not making a wrong move trying to get into a narrow space.